Welcome, everybody, to the Heart Coherence Collaborative. Today is one of my favorite days because we have our good friend Lee Harris back with us. So welcome back, Lee.
Thank you for having me back. Great to see you guys.
Yeah, so we've gotten the ability to develop a great relationship with Lee, and he channels the Z's. And I have gotten to read all the books that you've written so far, and they've been very meaningful, and they've helped develop my relationship with spirit. So thank you, and thank you, the Z's. It's always special to have you with us.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I would love to, if any of our group has not heard of you or doesn't know anything about the Z's, can you just say a little bit about your journey and what you do and what you love and who you are?
Yeah. So I was about 16 years old when I went into my own healing. I wouldn't call it a healing crisis. I think it was a healing awareness because I'd had various issues in my childhood that had resulted in a lot of food addiction, being very overweight, taken to Weight Watchers age 10, all of that stuff. So, and I also was dealing with my sexuality because I knew by the time, I was a teenager, I was gay, and I was like, oh, this isn't going to go well. And so around the age of 16, I started to go towards healing, and I went towards tarot. I went towards workshops, and I was a student of self-growth, and it was like my passion and my greatest joy for about 7 years. And then 7 years into it, I heard the voice of my guides, which I was skeptical about at first, and it wasn't something I was looking for. And channeling wasn't something I admired necessarily. I'm not saying I didn't like it, but I was more into other things. I was into shamanic workshops and self-growth. But the channeling came in and it was undeniable. So for about 3-4 years, I worked privately with people just for free, friends, and I would let them speak to the Z's, but I also had my own intuition developing alongside it. So I could sit with someone and feel or perceive where they were at, what they were going through, where they might need to go next. So I never thought it would be a job, but a friend said, do this as a job. And so I did it very casually, but it took off immediately, and people would come for readings from all over the world. And that was 2004, so 20 years ago. And these days, I am channeling, teaching energy awareness. I do a monthly video called The Energy Update on YouTube that for the people it's relevant for, or for the people who resonate with me and my messages, it's really taking the pulse on what might be showing up energetically. And a lot of people who will come to me are either very sensitive, very intuitive, very aware, and or looking to develop their own intuition. So as you said, Kyle, one of the things I've learned over the years is, yes, channeling is often liked by people because of the information. But I think the hidden thing around channeling that I've noticed is it's kind of like an intuition primer. So if you're choosing to tune into that kind of thing, it's not so much that the channeler or the guides that you're tuning into are super important. I mean, they might be in your life and in your path, but it's actually that exposing yourself to that opens up your own energy awareness, opens up your own intuition. For some, it can open them up to channeling, but for others, it just, I think, puts you in touch with the voice of your soul that so many of us were not educated into when we were kids. It was kind of scrubbed out of our training. So, I've been doing the work now for 20 years, and I also do music, which I've done for a little over 20 years, but we bring conscious music to the world, which myself and my collaborator Devor Bozi create. And I have a music label called Golden World Music, and we're dedicated to, in the coming years, being an advocate for the healing power of music, as well as the channeling and the energy work and all of that.
I can tell whenever I hear you say the word music in like all our past interviews, and even just now, I can tell you get a little lit up. So can you talk about music? Is that like your love, and why is it so important to you?
It's funny you say that, because as soon as you say that, I immediately go back to the age of 21. So the Z's have told me that they got me through music first. So I was a music lover as a kid. And honestly, music was like a healer for me. I didn't understand that at the time, but I would obsessively listen to albums and artists and singer-songwriters who were, in a way, walking me into feelings I had or thoughts I had and helping me move through them. And at the age of 21, I did a lot of musicals as a kid. And so music was always a part of my life. But at the age of 21, I started hearing melodies in my head. And I'd learned a few chords on guitar. And I knew I was never going to be an instrument player because I just didn't have the discipline to sit there and do what you need to do to get good at an instrument when you're in your 20s. But what would happen for me is every time I'd pick up the guitar to practice, I would hear a song. And so I would use the guitar to bring the song down, do a demo of it, and then would work with musicians. So at 21, I really thought my direction was going in music, because when this happened to me, I was in love. I was like, oh my God, this is the most magical thing that's ever happened to me. And to think that I could, serve music and maybe have a career in music, that to me would just be the best. But the universe had other ideas because I couldn't get the music into the music industry. And at the same time, I was starting, while I was working on my albums and trying to get them out there, I was having this rapidly successful healing work happening. But because I didn't think healing could be a job or like a full-time profession, because remember, this is 20 years ago. So it wasn't like we had the plethora of things on the internet we have now. And I wasn't doing the plethora of things I did now. It was a love for me. Yet the irony is, I now realize that the reason I wanted the music career was because I thought, great, I want to use my voice to go around the world and contribute to this force that has been a savior to me, like in some of my darkest times, and also an uplifting joy and something that would uplift me. So it was about 5 years ago that I really started walking back to music. We'd built an audience for the work that we did. We brought music into our live workshops. And around 2019, I literally got the message that if I didn't start bringing music back into my work, I would suffer. And so I didn't know how it would go, but we had the bandwidth, we had the resources to start producing it at a high level. I set up the company again, which I'd let be dormant for years. And that's kind of what we've been doing. And I just think music's the universal healer. Like, you don't have to have an ideology or a religious, I don't know. It's the universal healing language. So for me, serving that and being part of that and receiving that on a daily basis from all the amazing artists out there, instrumentalists, singer-songwriters, the whole thing is to me, it's magic. That's why we say music is magic. That's the Golden World Music motto. Music is magic. So
thank you.
This seems to connect for me with, I always get more out of hearing channeling rather than reading it, even though I do get a lot out of reading it, but there seems to be something there that's beyond the words and in the frequency of it. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I love that you say that, because the Z's used to say that. They used to say, because people would drift off. Like, I might be in a workshop and I'd do a channel for 45 minutes, a long channel. And people would come up afterwards and they go, oh my God, I can't remember anything. It's like the minute you started, I drifted off, or I went to this other place. So I didn't know how to answer that at the time, because I was like, oh, I can't explain that for you. But the Z's said a couple of things. They said, sometimes you don't need your mind to be engaged with the information. Sometimes you really do. And your mind goes, oh my God, this is opening my mind. And I needed my mind opened. But other times you just go off. And you either go off into your own intuition because of the frequency that's coming through, the sounds, the voice. I was always a little bit embarrassed that my voice changed when I channeled. And, I totally get why there is a kind of, the people who don't like channeling, the attack it will get is, you're making it up, you're faking, blah, blah, blah. And I've seen and heard all of that for a few decades, but I do definitely think there is something to the frequency, because it's not something that you can force as a channeler. The voice changes because the frequency changes, my body changes, my temperature changes. And so there is something to the sound and the frequency that's doing its own thing. And I'm like you, Leah, reading channeling to me is not very interesting, but I'm a sound person. So for me, that's why so much of my work has been audio. And even though we have taken the time to put, some of the work into books, which is really important for people who like to read and like to see the information, I'm also more prone toward listening.
Yeah, I love the books, just so you know. And I
Thank you.
had
That's great. I'm
such
glad.
a wild experience with your book
Mhm.
because whenever it says at the beginning it's a multi-dimensional book, but whenever I would open it, whatever I was reading would be directly applicable to like something in my life right at that moment. So if anyone's listening to this, definitely check out Lee's books if you do like to read like I do. But I have one question for you that's coming to mind because we interview a lot of different healers. We've had hundreds of healers on, and I've gotten the opportunity to observe your community, and your community is like they literally love you. Like there is a swarm around your community. The energy is so amazing. It's the biggest, most beautiful energy of any community that I've witnessed from somebody we've had on. So first of all, like hats off to you. I'm just curious what's going on inside.
Well, God, I can't compare it to other people. I think one of the things I was always really clear about, because I've spoken to lots of other people who do this work, and they've sometimes asked me advice or things that I do. And I was always very dedicated to working with other brilliant creatives. And my dream for the work was, well, as it grows, as I have enough money, I want to build a production team around this. And everybody in my team is very heart-based and very creative and very dedicated to this kind of work. So, even though I'm the front person, we're a team of 20, and we didn't used to be a team of, and there's a few more people who aren't so on the daily, but, we've become a team. And so I think in a way we've amplified that. That I think that amplification helps, but always from the word go, I think it's the language of emotion. And I know when I was younger, I really was starving for people to talk about feelings. I was not serving my own feelings. I didn't understand them. I had a lot of them. And so I was hungry for any time people were honest about feelings. So maybe it's because, I think the energy updates that I've put out every month now for 12 years on video. I mean, I did them for a few years before that too, but really I committed to once a month on video in 2012. I think we as a society just need more, well, I know I exhale when my feelings can be in the room. So perhaps it's that I and my team have been serving that at a time that we need it. And, maybe that won't be the case in a decade or two because it will be a bit more established. I don't know. But we hear that from retreat centers that we go to. They always say, your people are so lovely. So honestly, we're just grateful. We're just like, well, and they're really, very heartfelt, sensitive people. So I'm always surprised to hear that because I want to assume that it's that way everywhere. But we're grateful.
Well, good job putting together an amazing team, and everyone on Lee's team, we love you. You're doing a great job.
That is true because you'd be surprised. Like spiritual leaders, authors, teachers are surrounded by some seemingly like very
We've
difficult,
seen the other side of it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
They're not. So
Yeah.
that does make sense that it's just a whole feeling of team. And that's really nice that you give everyone credit. And that's a nice team to be on.
Totally. And I have also seen that side of it from day one. And I think when you first see that as someone who has just previously been the audience or the student of that kind of work, it's quite disheartening. And so that was always really important to me that we are as in our integrity as we can be,
That's nice. I'm thinking about, probably from the outside, people would assume somebody who's a channel is living a perfect, difficult, like,
yes,
maybe they're sitting around on a cushion and like every relationship is perfect and you've got the keys to the universe or something. But we were talking before we began the interview about that you've had some challenges this year. And I would love to hear about, just your human side living the last year since we saw you last.
Yeah. So people do assume that. It's funny because I've also had people quite shocked at me when I'm going through something and I share it with them and they're like, well, why don't you just ask the Z's to fix it for you? And I'm like, sometimes I do. And I never forget that they're there. But sometimes I want to learn as a human, and I have to go through it layer by layer. And even if they give me they might give me the headline or the future of where it's going, I have to, like we all do, unpick, unpack, move through the layers and get to because you're clearing the body as you do that. You can't just jump to it. You can't just bypass it. So I do feel lucky I can go to them at any time. But I also, I love my friends and the people that are my mentors, who I don't really have any official mentors who aren't also friends. We're just friends who mentor each other. One day you're helping someone, one day they're helping you. So I've never valued the channeling higher than that, but I do understand that they come from a higher perspective. And when I get the overview from them, I'm always like, oh, and then that moves me forward. The last year has been really interesting for me. We were saying, I definitely feel more myself than I have ever felt in my life, which is great. But I did go through a divorce last year, and we were together for a little over 7.5 years. And of course, like everybody, you don't get married thinking, you don't think, okay, well, at some point I'm going to get divorced. You go into it hoping you can have, the longest journey possible together. But it was an educational moment for me, because the Z's have always said it's a beautiful thing to have a long relationship with someone, but we as a society diminish the value of the person that you know for a week or the person that you know for 6 months. And they're saying you shouldn't, because sometimes you end up in a really long-term partnership because of the person you had 3 months with, and maybe the difficult ending you had with them dislodged something in you that needed to be dislodged before you met the partner. So I was already clear of not overvaluing time in a relationship. But what happened for us was, I guess like for many people, you start at the beginning of a relationship and all of your connection points are on fire with each other and are crackling with each other, and you're exactly who the other person needs, and the two of you hold hands and start walking. And I think a lot changed in our lives, a lot changed around us. And as we went through that growth journey, it's like we healed each other or took each other as far as we could. And then the growth, the healing, the sharing just became a bit arrested. And because of love and respect and the care we had for one another, it took a while to kind of go, oh, this hasn't really been active for 2 or 3 years, maybe, because the love and respect never went away and the care for each other never went away. But it was like a moment where, oh, we aren't actually serving each other's growth anymore. And if we stay together, we will hold each other back. So that's a really hard thing to go through when, that's not what you want. But I'm grateful to Stephen, my ex, and, grateful to myself and grateful to the support that we had, that we were able to navigate what could have been a really difficult, painful thing with as much love and care and compassion for each other as we were able to, and to come out the other side still as friends. So yeah, that was a huge thing for me, that really only concluded at the beginning of this year. I would say it took about a year to move through all of that. And also we were joined in business too. So that always adds another layer. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. But I'm really glad to be at this point, rather than a year ago when you're in the middle of all of that and trying to do your work and your life and, things that go on around you, crises that happen for family or friends that you're involved in too. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that so vulnerably. One of the things that I fell in love with about the Z's was just like how specific they were. There were certain things that I read that were just so cool. They talked about like there's crystalline structures on the earth that they go to that charge them up, and they also charge the crystalline structures up. Like reading some of your books just blew my mind, and it kind of got me back in touch with some of the magical side of things. But anyway, I'm just curious, have any new profound messages been coming up for the Z's? Is there anything they're talking about more now than, say, a year ago?
Yeah, the thing they've talked about a lot since, I would say, early 2023, and it's still coming up, is, and this is a weird thing for me to say because we're in 2024, we need to get to 2025. And I know that, a little bit further. But they've said that They always said 2017 to 2024 would be very tumultuous years on the planet, and they would be game-changing years. Like they would be the thing that would rip the foundations out of old energy, create somewhat of a planetary revolution, although they did say that won't just look like revolution you've experienced before. You often think of it as taking to the streets. And they said that will be part of it, but it's a lot bigger and more cosmic and energetic than that as well. So they've said that we've been in an energetic war for years, and that it's now coming to the surface. And so there are a lot of ugly truths that society is waking up to and having to reckon with in order to go into a new phase where the consciousness that we have built as a planet can be how we build the future, versus the old trying to continue to drag us backwards or clamp down even more on us. So I think when you look into the world right now and everything we're dealing with, you're like, oh yeah, I can see that playing out. But they've said from 2025 onwards, we will see more concrete and undeniable evidence of the future that is possible. And it will start to be easier for those things to be apparent. So I was always curious what 2024 would bring. And I'm not at all surprised we're where we are right now with everything. And I know that we're recording this maybe a couple of months ahead of when your community get it. I hope I'm allowed to say that. Yeah. So I don't know. I'll tell you why I have to say that, because I sometimes get grief. Like I record my energy updates like 6 days before they come out. So if anything happens in that 6 days, sometimes I get grief. They're like, why isn't he talking about this? And I'm like, well, I'm talking about the energy. So the specifics are something you have to work out. Because they're going to be what's personal to you. But also, you know, I'm just throwing that out there because who knows what's going to happen between now and when this goes out. So 2025 is the year that I actually, when I feel into 2025, I feel excited about it. And even though 2024 is tough in many ways, I feel like, no, it's I understand what they're saying. It's a year we have to go through. I think the most interesting thing I feel intuitively about this year is it's going to be interesting to see more people in society wake up to things that they previously didn't want to see or weren't allowed to see. And the Z's have always said that's the tipping point. They said you only need about, I think they said 30% of people need to be aware and awake to this for the domino effect to begin, which I thought was interesting. I thought it doesn't need to be 50. And they're like, no, 30 is enough, because then it permeates through consciousness. So yeah, that's one of the things they've been talking about a lot.
I'm always curious. It seems like things are so horrible now. And like Steven Pinkerton has a whole book where he talks about it's actually much more peaceful than it's ever been. And it's hard to really sort out what's going on. So are things truly so much worse, or is it just social media and media coverage that makes us feel that way?
Very good point. Well, the Z's said years ago, this was like 2010, when I was not personally as aware of what I'm aware of now. They said, you have no idea how barbaric it was. If you go back in time, they said, those of you who don't like what you're seeing now, you have no idea how much it's shifted. And that always goes through my mind. And I've heard that from other voices and philosophers and researchers. They talk about, but isn't it interesting that the media and our news cycles, they only want to focus us on things we should be afraid about. I had a conversation with a family member the other day, and they were like, oh, I haven't watched the news in days, I must put it on. And I was like, I don't want to be here when you put it on, thank you, because the frequency is so low. I said, I'd watch it if they also celebrated the breakthroughs. I said, because this is not how you create a healthy society. This is how you create a society that's so afraid that they'll do whatever you tell them to do. And so I've been very aware of that for years and years and years. I don't spend my time on that the way I have people in my life who are more activists in that area. And so I kind of hear things through there, but I know what my job is. My job is positioned over here. But I 100% agree with you. I think that's the wake up that we have to pay attention to. It's like, what is this system that we're all in? And The more people understand about personal well-being, societal well-being, the more the system that we are in starts to look sick. And the more people go, oh, this isn't really that healthy, that's when we start to see the changes.
Yeah, yeah. It's so fascinating to think about how back then in the physical environment, there, it was barbarous, like you said. But today, like the war is actually in our mind. But if it's in your mind, it can be just equally as bad. Like people are actually fighting those wars in their brains, and it's just crazy. So I really like that analogy. And yeah, the one thing that I wanted to just ask you before we dive in to ask the Z's some questions is, who are the Z's for anybody that's not aware?
When I first met them, I asked lots of questions because I was like, well, at first I was like, is this multiple personality disorder? It could have been. But I did think, honestly, even as I had that thought after working with them for weeks and I was learning so much and they were explaining so much, I was like, well, if it is, I'm going to not tell anybody about it because it's really useful. It's like, I got a good one. Mine isn't like causing me problems. Mine is when I go home, I'm like, I'll just keep this quiet. I'm not doing a great job of keeping it quiet now, I guess. No, they first of all explained that they are my guides, but that they are also a large group. So they said not everybody they explained we're a group of 88 beings, but we can communicate with other beings. So, they said, think of us as a consciousness library. So they explained that many of them had gathered, and apparently this isn't uncommon when someone's role or job or purpose is to be a transmitter of those messages. And again, I will just say that the reason I think we have channelers, psychics, intuitives is not for any special reason about those individuals. It's just we need some group of people on the planet serving that so that more people remember that part of themselves. So my guides, several of them said we have been incarnate on Earth before. Some of us never have. Some of us have been on other planets. So you can think of us as a voice of galactic consciousness. But unlike some other channels I've seen, say Bashar, Daryl Anker is very much coming through an ET lens. And then there are other channelers out there who very anchored into angels or what we might know as more biblical human style guides. The Z's just feel right down the middle to me, like somewhat open and quite crystalline, to be honest. So there are 88 of them. I have only ever really had contact with about 14 or 15 in the group, and that was back in the early days. But they're a group that work for me and serve me if I ask for their help, but also they're gathered because it was a destiny path for me and for them to do this, even though, of course, I would never have known that before all of this began.
Beautiful.
Okay, so we're going to talk to the Z's.
Are you ready?
Now that we know who they are.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Let me just grab a couple things here. Okay. You have a very curious community. It's interesting. I was just tuning in on them a little bit. It's interesting. I'll share this. Every community is different. One of the things that feels to characterize your people, and of course there's many things, but the thing that hits me immediately is your group are very much about spreading information. And of course, information is also heart energy. That is information. I don't necessarily mean facts, although that can be part of it. But they're a curious group whose job it is to take in, receive, and then disseminate. It's not that you couldn't argue that some level of that happens in all spiritual groups, but there's a really strong through line with your group of it's a bit like a gathering of teachers who come together to be students so that they can then go back out and be teachers in a very unique way. But that's interesting to me. So anyway, just that came into me as I just tuned in on your group. So we'll see. Good. Well, we would also add architects of consciousness. So there are those who are healers where consciousness is concerned. There are those who are educators where consciousness is concerned. We would say that the architects of consciousness is one very strong aspect in this gathering. And we will also say that in 2 or 3 years, this group will slightly shift and change, not in a dramatic way, but simply through evolution. But at the moment, the signature that is most present in your community as a through line is that you are all here together to be architects of consciousness. It is a little like you come together to study the plans, and then as a group, you each take a part of the building that you are going to work on, or that you are going to go and tell other people how to build these types of buildings. So that through line is very strong for all of you. But what keeps you all together, what draws you in, is the idea of the heart. And remember, there is this notion on earth that the heart is a very warm, soft, fuzzy thing. And we would say, no, no, no. That is how humans have interpreted what heart energy is. A warm, soft, fuzzy person, or a warm, soft, fuzzy feeling. And the truth is, the heart is, we would say, the brain of the soul. It is the center of the soul, the brain of the soul. So the higher mind that you often put into your crown chakra area, the third eye, which makes sense and is true in some ways. The heart is the brain center of the soul, and the place in which your soul can most feel, be present, and emanate out into your human life. It's not to say you cannot have cosmic experiences, meditative experiences, visionary experiences that go outside your energy field, because you can and you do. But the heart center in a human is where it emanates from. So, because heart is one of the key word magnets for your community, that, of course, is also a shared area, an area that is respected, an area that is desired, and an area that your community wish to bring more of to the world. But you do it through being architects of consciousness. So, with that said, we will turn ourselves over to your questions. A pleasure to be back in your enlightening presence.
Aziz, it is so good to be back with you. I was wondering, based off of what you just felt into about our community, how can Leah and I better serve them based off of the needs that you feel they are seeking?
Continue to enjoy yourselves. Enjoy yourselves. One of the most controversial messages at the moment for many of you on the planet is this idea of focusing on joy, particularly because you are increasingly aware of the pain and suffering that is going on the planet. And you are also highly focused on those areas. You are all being focused on those areas, not necessarily through your own choosing, but as a way of being shown from others, this is what the planet is. Well, actually, pain and suffering is not what the planet is. It is what man has made of the planet. It is what the systems and the structures have decided the planet should be. And even right now, you are in the middle of man-made war, man-created war. And we know that many of you have a heavy heart about this. Of course, war has been on Earth all of the time, but you are currently globally focused on a war that is man-created. And often we will be aware that some of you have the thought, well, if we were not warring inside ourselves, there would be no war on Earth. And we would say yes and no. No, because you are not the ones choosing to go to war. The system that you are kept outside of and do not have a great deal of power over as it stands currently is a system that is choosing to repeatedly go to war, and the people get dragged along behind it, sometimes being the target of the war, sometimes being collateral damage. So you see, this is where there is a disconnect on Earth right now that many of you are beginning to slowly wake up to. Where are the systems that we are held within and serving? How are they not bringing the planet to a higher frequency? And how do we see that, acknowledge that, talk about that, and change it? because it is going to take the revolution of the people for that to change. And it is already in action. So back to our point about joy. It is very hard for many of you to get yourselves out of the difficult feelings that you have right now as a sensitive being on a planet that is having so many areas implode at the same time. And to say to yourself, well, how can I focus on joy? That seems selfish. And we would say, no. Joy is not necessarily you going to an amusement park all day while everyone else is having a terrible time, although sometimes that can be your joy. And for some of you, you couldn't think of anything worse than going to an amusement park for joy. Joy is instead the ability to be present in the heart. And you cannot be fully present in the heart if you are only in the heart where suffering is concerned. You cannot be fully in the heart if you are only in the heart when the needs, woes, and pains of others activates your heart constantly. That is an imbalanced heart. That is a heart that is radaring pain. This is why empaths need to understand their gift and who they are in order to let it be a gift rather than a curse. This is why humans need to heal through the relationships they've had, the life experiences they've had, so that they can become greater architecture in their energy field that allows for more heart. So when we say the two of you need to enjoy yourselves more, there needs to be a feeling of well-being, a feeling of good. And you have both taken exponential leaps, not just in the last year, but in the last 2 to 3 years to move yourselves into this position. And that is why we say in 2 to 3 years, your community will again slightly shift. Simply because you will be evolving, the community will be evolving, the need you will be serving will be evolving and will have grown. So you are serving by listening, paying attention, seeing what the needs are, but you sometimes also have to serve by being the leader of joy. And that is a very important area on Earth right now. How can you as humans experience more light and joy inside yourselves so that you are strong and robust and able to bring those frequencies out into the world? Because one who is consumed by the pain and suffering of the world is not so useful to changing the world. Now, some activists, if you like, will identify with pain and suffering enough to move them into action in an area that they have a purpose here on Earth to help change. But there comes a point when you have to evolve beyond only picking up on pain and suffering. So you are at a pivotal time on Earth where the consciousness of the heart is a language, an experience, and an energy that needs to be understood and celebrated. So you are already doing the work you need to be doing. The more you are able to feel good in that work, the more the goodness will emanate out into your community. And the more the goodness emanates into your community, the more the architects of consciousness that your community are will take that out into the outside world.
Relating to that, we have phrases like a mother is only as happy as her saddest child. I think we take maybe some pride in the goodness of, or it feels like goodness to think I can't be happy while others are suffering. So I'd love to hear you talk a little more even about the difference between really suffering for the pain of others and compassion and what the difference is.
Yes, there are some on the planet who are built to run emotion through their system. There are some who are programmed, as it were, to start crying when they are in the presence of someone else who is in pain. And they are built that way for a purpose, and they are able to still bring joy and happiness into their lives, even though they have that permeable skin. But there are many who are not built that way, but behave that way and believe that is their design, when in fact, that is the true sign of the suffering they are carrying inside their own body. So, as it relates to a mother who is only as happy as her saddest child, or a father who feels the same way, there is a truth to this for the majority on Earth. There is a truth to this because parents will care deeply for their children in a way they may not care as deeply for the rest of the world. That is not a judgment on them. In fact, the role of parenthood is often the deepest love that many humans will experience, because it is the most, or can be, we should qualify here, the most selfless love. If you are doing it in the way that you might see as benevolent toward your child rather than selfish or self-focused for you as a parent and what you want to get out of parenting. However, there is a line. You see, there is a spiritual truth on earth, which is, it is actually not your choosing as an individual what happens to anyone else around you. You cannot keep someone on the planet longer than they are supposed to be here. You cannot protect other people from suffering. Now, as a child, you are guided and hopefully sheltered by your parents from certain harms that would come your way. And that is the path of the young. But once the child is an adult, and we will just use an example here, 20 onwards, just as an example, at that point, the mature parent, the spiritually evolved parent, may have concern for the well-being of their child who is sad, but will also understand that this is their life and this is their path, and they can be there for them in the way that they would be there for a friend that they care for. So you see, what we are trying to illustrate is sometimes people use a phrase like that as a truth, and that is okay. I am sad because one of my children is sad. The question is, can you also be happy? Are there other areas of life, other relationships on the same day? Can you also be happy? And if that is a yes, then you are fairly balanced. But if you are so consumed by the sadness of another, you have to ask yourself, why have I allowed my energy field to map so deeply onto another's? You have a term for this, codependency. There are those empaths who are afraid to feel their own pain, so they start feeling everyone else's and then blame the world and its wounds for their own wounded state. Everything is energy. And so if you yourself are becoming bogged down by heavy feeling, it is yourself you have to look to ask, is this feeling true for me? Is this something I need to move through, burn off? Or is this something I need to deeply feel? And only you will know the answer. But the enmeshment that you have as human beings with each other's emotions is somewhat inevitable with those people that you get closest to. Children, loved ones, your best friends, your closest people. But you also have the opportunity as a spiritually growing being to take a look at that when it comes up and ask yourself, is this true for me to be so enmeshed? Or do I need to return to my center? Because from my center, I will be more useful to that person. So compassion is when you can feel deeply for another person's plight, whether it be for a few minutes or a few hours. But compassion tends to lead to action. Compassion will see you reaching out to someone. It will see you waking up the next day thinking, I will just send them a loving message. I will just give them a call. I will just pop in and see how they're doing. Suffering for someone else is when you become so consumed with someone else's state that you cannot get yourself back. That is the difference as we would describe it.
Thank you.
Good explanation. I have a deep respect for some of your wisdom in regards to the energy of the planet. And one thing that Leah and I are really excited about is we've been invited to do a global meditation in a few months where everyone's going to be coming together and they're going to be radiating their heart energy to have compassion towards the planet. I was just curious your perspective on is this actually influencing anything when we come together and do this? What is actually happening on an energetic level?
Yes, it is, as some of you would say, 1,000% having an impact on an energetic level. But there is another side to it as well. So number one, that many people opening their hearts, focusing on the raised vibration of the planet, it has a big effect because you start to connect, especially worldwide, a web of light across the planet. your group intention to see light be allowed to permeate more of the planet than some of the darkness you are currently experiencing or enmeshed in, it has an immediate effect, and it can last for many days, weeks, and even months afterwards. But there is another side to it, and that is a little less discussed. It is a powerful reminder to all of you of the power that you have to come together and hold a group intention of oneness. So for the individual who practices this for perhaps the first time in their life, taking part in a global meditation, they might immediately feel feelings of well-being or feel good that they have chosen to send their energy this way. But what they are also doing is in training themselves to realize this is possible. And not only is this possible, for all of you, this is actually ancient. Your soul knows exactly what this is. You see, part of the, shall we say, mystique that some people might perceive, the idea that there are 88 of us right now in communication with Lee. And the truth is, yes, we are a group of 88 beings, but there are currently only 15 of us working to bring this information through verbally. The other group, the rest of the members, are working on energy balancing, reading the room, as it were. So you see, it is a large group effort that is taking place right now, but the focal point is only a smaller number of us. The reason that people can be a little mystified by the number that we are when you're hearing a singular voice is when we look down on planet Earth, we see a singular voice. Now, we can identify all of the different voices in different countries from different people. We can zoom in and zero in. But what we look at is, what is the global frequency? What is the frequency of a certain area? And the combination of all of you is creating a certain height and also a certain, let's say, challenge to a higher vibration, meaning the lower vibrations pulsed out by a group is the challenge they are trying to overcome. So when you do a global meditation like this, you all agree to raise the ceiling together. But your souls remember that this is normal. You see, to us, being a group of 88, as we have defined it to those of you who pay attention to what we are and what we do, even that is somewhat mythic because we can continue to extend outwardly and communicate with thousands of beings. So from our perspective, it is interesting for you as human beings to notice that it seems unusual that we are a group. But what we are trying to remind you all is that your point of focus tends to be that you are singular. And by the way, you need to have a certain level of that singular focus in order to be a human on Earth. So it is not a wrong way of seeing things. But the truth is, you are not singular. You are part of a group. And so that is the consciousness shift that's taking place on Earth now, more of an understanding that there is this opportunity to come together. And we know that there are many different opinions about the internet, and like anything, it can be used for good or for ill. But this global meditation that is taking place, not just in your group, but with so many groups around the world, would simply have not been possible without the ability of the internet to connect you all globally. So, like everything on Earth, there are positives and negatives, light and dark. And it's not necessarily that you need to stamp out the dark, because the dark is the other end of an energy scale. But what you are looking to do as humans is to elevate some of the darker strands in your structures and systems that have been existing so far. Now that consciousness has raised, it's time to update and upgrade some of those. And this will play out over a period of time. Certainly the next 30 years is going to be an extraordinarily revolutionary time on Earth. But you are still not, as we would say, out of the woods when it comes to some of the heavier, darker, more old ancient energies trying to control things on Earth, which is why those souls among you who gather together for this ancient practice of global meditation and raise the vibration of the planet, it is all of you bringing your efforts towards the opposite. So on many levels, this is a wonderful thing to do.
I would love to close with a message for our group, for our ever expanding group.
Good. Well, firstly, we will say you are here. Take in a nice deep breath. Ha. You are alive. You are ready. You are curious. This word curious that came up for Lee relates to your hunger for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of new ways. Some of you are curious lifelong. Some of you have been led here by a recently opened curiosity about life. And this feels like the resonance for you to be in, at least for this time in your journey, this moment. But what we will say to those of you who are curious, there are some of you who do feel a little sensitive to the world right now. The understandable difficulties that you can have given some of the tumult and some of the waves and some of the darker waves playing out on Earth can make you want to take refuge in your spirituality, in your seeking of consciousness, however you want to term it. And some of you question if that is okay. You question, is this the right way to behave? Should we be out there doing more? And the answer is always the same from us. If you are repetitively questioning something without taking action on it, then you have your answer. If you are taking action on something organically, fluently, and because you feel ready to do it, then you are ready for action. So some of you have not what we would call a guilt complex exactly, but some questions about your idea of how you should be helping the world more. And we will say that for some of you, you are in the cocoon phase. You are learning more about who you are, how to run your energy through your body in the world. And you will be called into action in the future if that is your path. But never underestimate the power of an evolving, emerging individual on the planet. As you allow yourself to grow, evolve, shift, and heal, you become a more healed person on the planet. So even your own journey of personal growth has a vibrational effect on the planet. And if you are overly or repetitively questioning whether or not you should be doing something, ask yourself, do I feel guilt? Do I feel shame? Do I feel like I am not enough? Because the truth is, if you keep focusing on your evolution as you feel to and as you feel you can manage, you will emerge from the other side and move fluently into action that you never knew was possible before. But in order to do that, you often have to transform and metamorphose from who you were before, what you were before. And for many of you, that requires a certain level of pulling back and inaction, at least for a period of time, so that you can go through that cocoon phase. And we would say in your community right now, at least 40% of the community feel the way that we are speaking about. You have a smaller contingent who are quite gung-ho, 10 to 20%, who are here for leading the charge and leading the change. And then the rest of the members, you are all in a space of, we would call it, harmonizing the heart on the planet from within. Through your meditative practices, through your way of being as you walk around the world, you aren't looking to be highly aggressive out there in the world in terms of making sure that change happens. But you are also very clear that you have worked hard to be a stabilizing force and that there is value in that. So if you look at those three different subgroups we have described, they can all be stages of your day, your week. Some parts of your day you might feel gung-ho. Other parts of your day you might just feel steady and settled. Other parts of your day you might feel like, I just want to shut the door, pull down the blinds, and not look at the world because it's too painful. So remember, you are all evolving beings and you move through states of being. And if you do commit to your own evolution, you will evolve and change. Sometimes what you can do, not just this community, but humans as a whole, you try and outthink your way or from a state or a place you are in. And you will never outthink your way out of something. You will outfeel, outgrow, and shift your energy to move beyond it. So if you are obsessively, repetitively thinking about something and you aren't taking action on it, try and let those thoughts go and focus on a different aspect of your life. And you will be surprised that on the day you least expect it, you will suddenly find yourself doing that thing that you desired to do months or years ago, but were either too afraid of doing at that time or not knowledgeable enough. If you have a dream or a desire, trust the timing, is what we are trying to say. Don't assume because it isn't happening today that it's not in your future. But also don't push your body faster than it can go. The body always needs to catch up. So, a pleasure to be with you all in peace and in love, to you curious and heartfelt architects of consciousness. Ha. Hi, guys.
Oh,
That was great.
that was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I
Thank
love
you.
it so much.
Mm.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do a meditation.
Dude, you probably need a few minutes to.
I'm good. I'll just take a drink and then we're good to go.
All right.
Hmm.
Cheers.
Okay. So if you just like to close your eyes and make sure you're comfortable, whether you're sitting or lying down, and just take a few steady breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. Just steady breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. And allow yourself to feel your body. Notice how your body feels. Are any areas of your body speaking to you right now? Are they feeling a little stuck or a little stiff? Are they feeling energized or electrified? Just notice without needing to do anything or overly think about it. Just do a scan of your body to see how your body is feeling. And if you want to adjust anything because of how your body is feeling, go ahead. You may want to slightly adjust your legs, your arms, your hands, how your body is positioned. Just get yourself really comfortable. And now allow yourself to receive your soul fully into your body. Your soul is allowed into your body deeply, lovingly, caringly. It won't overwhelm you. It won't come in more than you are ready for, but it can always be invited in a little deeper each day. The soul has a way of seeing, feeling, and perceiving your life that adds a few other dimensions to the way that most of us were trained to see, feel, or perceive as humans. So when we invite the soul to be present in our body and our awareness, healings, changes, transformations can occur. We needn't be afraid of our soul, because it would never overwhelm our body or our sense of balance or equilibrium, but we do need to remember to invite our soul back, to invite our soul to be present on a daily basis with us, guiding us, loving us, moving us through. The people that we often enjoy meeting in life or feel an immediate spark with, it's usually our souls that recognize each other. So sometimes you feel that openness with another being because the two of you are able to go to an open state very quickly. Equally, there are opportunities in life that might come our way or be offered to us that we will feel a spark around. That's our soul inviting us to take the step, take the leap. And we need never force our body faster than it is able or ready to go. Even if the soul comes in and has an idea for you or a message or a vision, the soul and the body are working in harmony. So if the body doesn't feel ready, we wait. We don't forget what the soul invited us to see, perceive, feel, or think, but we wait until the most harmonic time for action. And the more we work with the energy of our soul every day and invite it to be a part of our day, the more that harmonic resonance between your soul and your humanity can start to take place. We're all working on that right now. And we're doing it not just for ourselves, for we have been enlightened before, awake before, conscious before, whatever name you want to give it. But in this human experience that we are each living, we are working to bring more consciousness and enlightenment through our human identity so that we leave an imprint of consciousness, soul, harmony on the planet when we leave. And we're doing that every day, whether we know it or not. And the darkest times in our life are usually the times when we're very much in our human story, and we've forgotten that a conversation with our soul is just available to us at a moment's notice. So if ever you're struggling to access your own soul, the best thing you can do is to turn on a piece of music or a video or an audio or read a book that for you reconnects you to that wider self, that soul self, or to phone a friend or to see a friend who connects you to that. We all have our dips in the journey. But who we are now as a society, the dips don't have to be as great as they used to be. We don't have to let the lights go out the way we may have previously experienced them going out before. If ever we are struggling, we can say, "Soul, please come to me today. I need your light, your care, your wisdom, your guidance. Soul, please walk with me today. Soul, please wrap around me today." Good. And so it is. You are a beautiful human soul. We'll just take a few deep breaths to close. Nice and steady. In through the nose, out through the mouth. And whenever you're ready to slowly open your eyes and come back to the room, do so.
That was beautiful.
This whole thing was beautiful. We love you so much. Thank you for coming on with us.
Yeah, I just want to, before we end, just how can
yes.
our followers and everybody listening get in touch with you and honor all the great work you're doing?
Well, I have a website called leeharrisenergy.com. And I also have a website called leeharrismusic.com, and the two interweave. And I have the same YouTube channels. So Lee Harris Energy, Lee Harris Music. We've recently released some mantras that are musical that you can sing along with, recite. So they're on the music side. That's the most recent release. And on the energy side, I do an energy update every month. It's free. It's usually 30, 35 minutes. And there's usually 7 or 8 themes that the guides give me, and I will translate them and say how they might show up in your life. And then for those who want to go deeper with me, I have a monthly community called The Portal. Lots of a real range of things in there to support you on your journey. And I regularly do courses, some channeled, some more on energy awareness. And we have a book coming out in late May called The Future Human. And some of your community might be familiar with Regina Meredith from Gaia TV, who's wonderful. She interviewed my guides, the Z's. It's about 7.5 hours of audio, and it's on topics about where we're going as a humanity. It covers everything from the environment to AI. She had brilliant questions. So it was very dense, and we both needed about a week to recover after we had spent a week doing all those recordings. And we've put it into book form for those who like to read it, and it's also available on Audible. So many different ways to connect.
Well, we just want to say we really appreciate your friendship in our lives. So both of us. It's always so amazing to have you with us.
You guys too. Thank you. And I don't know if your community know, but that's why I asked if last year when we had a book coming out, I asked if you guys would do an interview for it, because I felt the same resonance. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Right, well, thank you everybody for watching.
We're sending love to everybody, and thank you, Lee.
Love you.
Thank you guys.
Heart Coherence family, we are incredibly excited to share with you that this event is the lead-up event to HeartMath's Global Coherence Initiative, which will be taking place in California, May
16th to 19th.
We'll be speaking at that event alongside Jack Canfield, Greg Braden, Lynn McTaggart, and many other phenomenal guests.
You can attend in person. It's going to be an amazing retreat experience. You can also attend virtually.
Yeah. And so the real cool part about it is Leah and I will be guiding a meditation. And in that meditation, Roland McCready and other scientists are going to be measuring the impact it has on the field of the earth using random number generators that are all around the world.
Yeah. So we're going to be guiding a meditation where thousands of people send love and compassion, and we're going to measure the effects. So it's going to be pretty cool.
We really hope you will bring your energy, your loving energy, to join us to see if we actually can influence the field of the earth. So we love you all.